Welcome to Coach David Schuman's Success for Life podcast, where Coach Schuman tackles the important topics and interviews the very best in business, sports, and leadership to help you maximize your success. If you're looking to get the most out of everything you do, then listen now to the Success for Life podcast.
This is Coach Schuman here for the Success for Life podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Chris Martinez. He has an unbelievable process from a sales standpoint that's helped grow his car sales business at one of the top locations out there in Texas, from 150 cars to 1,000 cars a month. He's wrote a couple of books. He now also has developed a software that's unique to the auto sales space and actually probably applicable eventually to everybody that's looking to generate leads, generate contacts, and generate business. Welcome, Chris.
Man, I'm glad to be on, man. It's I couldn't have said it any better the way how you were able to outline it that quick. So that's good stuff. That's kind of been my life for the last 15 years. You know what I mean? So it's good stuff.
Absolutely. I wanted to have everyone understand a little bit more of your background. So I summarized obviously quickly, some of the things you've done, but tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into car sales, how you got into that part of the business.
Well, it's funny because my twin brother, I have a twin brother, by the way, and he was being recruited by a car dealership because he was a property manager. And I was in El Paso, moving back to Las Vegas with my family because they're in construction. And my brother was a property manager at an apartment place. And when I talked to him, he said, hey, you know what, before you go back with our uncle that works in construction, why don't you go, talk to this company? I forget what the name of it, CarMag. He's why don't you go check it out? It seemed pretty interesting. They've been recruiting me for the last couple of weeks now. Maybe it's something, maybe it's not, but check it out. And so before I went with my uncle, I said, man, I really don't want to break my back, laying tile and doing all this other stuff. So I said, I might just go check it out. And I walked in there and I said, hey guys, I understand you guys have been recruiting my brother, but I'm your second best option right now. And I'm ready to help you guys, do what you do. I don't even know what you're doing. They had never had one in Las Vegas. So they had it at a DoubleTree hotel. And so I didn't even know what it was. I just thought it was some kind of customer service thing that I felt like I could help people out. And it was kind of funny because I didn't even know it was a car dealership. So I walk in and sure enough, they hired me on the spot. And it was kind of history after that, man. It's been good. Life is good.
So car sales is such an interesting business to me. And there's we talked about in the pre-interview that I feel like it's a really tough business. I think the guys that are able to transition and sell a lot in car sales probably have the ability to do a lot of different things because it is so sales intensive. And it's, one of the things, having been in business for a long time now, the number one thing, the hardest thing to find is an excellent salesperson. It is by far the hardest thing to find. Somehow I always find myself doing all the selling. I'm turning over sales guys left and right, So I'd love for you to share with people, what is it about sales that you really like? And then, how you really started to build yourself a book in the car sales space.
Well, it's funny because I remember long ago, I had a buddy of mine tell me that he looked like I was dressed like a car salesman. So he said, man, you look like a car salesman. And I remember telling him, F you, man, I'm not a car salesman. And, who knew that was foreshadowing or what that was going to be like later on in life, I'd be a car salesman. But, I think it's, I think at the end of the day, it's really just about the people business. People forget that, if you build relationships with people, I mean, that's where it really starts. And if you can identify with your customers and, mirror how they work and just kind of just work for them instead of trying to push something down real hard, I think it really helps separate you from everyone else, because there's a lot of dealerships that I've seen that have some bad apples, right? It's not the dealer. I think it's some of the people that they hire that give the industry a bad rap sometimes, because I think there's a lot of good people out there that are just trying to earn a living and, trying to treat people right and kind of trying to guide them into the right vehicle for their needs. But, there are some of those bad apples that we find from time to time. I've had to personally let some of those people go from our organization. But I think it happens in any organization, really. But, at the end of the day, if you focus on your people and try to help develop them and train and, like the Grant Cardones of the world. And
Right.
There's a lot of really good people out there that are training and teaching them. And, although there's some people that kind of take it to that next level and make it feel cutthroat. I think some of the, at the end of the day, if you treat people right, it starts with your people, and if you treat them right, they should be able to treat your customers right too.
Well, you're a twin, just like Grant Cardone as well.
That's crazy, huh?
That's crazy. So you share some similarities from that standpoint. Have you actually worked with him or in his some of his sales training process? I always see that's one of the things. Obviously, that's a core of his business. One of his businesses.
Yeah, we signed up with his program a couple of years ago. I had the opportunity to shake his hand a couple of times. I actually went to one of his conferences. It was pretty spot on. I mean, he brought a bunch of good speakers, and they kind of helped me take it to that next level, if you will. I think that I've read his story, and he wrote a couple books. He built the software. Then he started going into sales training, and or he's been doing sales training for a long time. But part of it, how he started his whole program is, he got into the software game and got into sales, wrote books. And so I kind of mirrored a lot of the stuff that he did. And that's why I felt compelled. Not only was the information I was going to give to people valuable, but I felt like if I could write a book, I can get into, doing some of the things he was doing, that, maybe I can get some attention on myself, because the software I built, I mean, it was built out of necessity. There's no software out there that even comes close to what we're doing. And, I ran into a little bit of money selling the amount of cars that we sell. And I said, I'm just going to build my own. I literally was not even trying to build one. I just literally was saying, you know what, I'm going to see what's out there and see if they can do what I have an idea for. And nobody could do it. So I said, you know what? I mean, how much would it really take? And then before you know it, after a couple of years of investing a ton of money, it took a lot.
So tell me about, let's go two things. Number one, because I want to talk about the software. But before I talk about it, what are some of the sales techniques that you like? Anyone's going, when they hear 150 to 1,000 at a dealership, I mean, that's a monumental number. What is that? Six times, 6x sales, not quite 10x, but it's on the way, right? So,
yes, sir.
Especially the car sales business. So, what are some of the techniques that maybe you use or strategies you use to acquire more leads? Obviously, that's a big part in sales, and I always say if you don't have enough leads to pursue, you pursue those leads and you pursue those 4, 5, 6 times, and then they say no, well then you're out, right? So how do you continue to get things in the pipeline, which might dictate into your software, right? And then how do you close those on a regular basis, get people to understand that you're the guy to go to?
Well, we established that we wanted to make an impact here in the community. So we've been heavily involved in the community in every facet, whether it's charity or just, community work. We're constantly trying to, dig roots here. But more importantly, I mean, I think the business was always here. There's quite a lot of people here in Austin, Texas. So part of it was just paying attention to what was already coming in, and then building your team. I think where most people fail is, one, they stop training, and then 2, they don't really try to grow, and that's kind of been what I've seen over the years, and looking at different organizations, and with now us having our software in different stores right now, I can see where there's a lot of need to train and to really point out the areas of opportunity for these dealers. Because now I'm looking at it and I'm just thinking, man, these guys haven't been doing this, haven't been doing that. And I start looking at it and I'm just thinking, man, there's so much opportunity. They don't even understand it. If you focus first on the customers you already have and nurture the customers you already have, I mean, you'll be able to increase your business right there because you focus on your referrals, you focus on building that community. And I mean, it's kind of like what you've done with your business, right? You build your relationships, you focus on that, and then you just kind of build on that. And it just kind of slowly keeps growing, but you have to keep staffing up at every level. When we got to 200 cars a month, 300 cars, 400, every level you're going to find some different pains, and you have to shore each one of those areas up. And it just keeps going. And even where we're at right now, we have area of opportunity to keep growing. But right now we've got some land issues that we're trying to find some more land, and we're kind of capped at the expansion at this point because Austin has been such a huge growing economy that, I mean, to try to get a piece of land, I mean, you're talking just crazy money, and you're thinking, man, how are we going to get a return on something like that right now? You know what I mean? So now it's even harder for us to get to that next level just because we've been running into things that I think I might have lost you for a second. Yeah, but every it happens, right? Like every level you got to keep growing, and so like when I look at what you've done, you're gonna run into some areas that you're like, man, how do I break that next ceiling? And it's just you just got to keep evolving as you grow. So I think that's where most people fail. They stop evolving.
Is. Well, and not only growing is when a catastrophe happens. So like for us, we were Inc. 5000 fastest growing company in 2012 or 13. It was 2 years in a row, and then our industry changed. So at least in the evaluation space. So the things that we did, which were supremely important because of rules with the NCAA and stuff, changed it and kind of moved it more towards where the colleges were and made college camps a little bit more important than what we were doing. And so we had to continue to adjust. So we went through some down years where it's happened to me. I think this is the third time that's happened to me in my career. I used to own training facilities back in through 2011, but I saw locally that I couldn't expand the way that I wanted to and the return that I wanted to. So we started these new programs, which ended up becoming bigger. And so then now 2014 through 2017 has been a whole transition to all new programs that we've been going through the last 2 years. And you take like a little dip in sales to hopefully, go back up and get to where you have to be. And that's the hardest part because then there gets to be some like lean time. You're making an insane amount of money, and then all of a sudden you're like, got to be a little tight and control everything for a little while in order to be able to get back to where you got to go. So while you find new capital to go into a new enterprise, which we're actually doing and we've done very well, but those transitions are tough, and it's always hard. Like you don't want to end up being Toys R Us, right? You don't want to.
Exactly.
I mean, I like to get to be as big as they are, but I don't want to be where
you go backwards. It's crazy. You point that out. I mean, literally, I was in my quest to find more land down the street from me. A Sears, a Toys R Us, and some other big box is like closing its doors, and I'm like, man, I got a whole block now that I could choose from. So we got some our eyes on certain areas right now, and it's might be opportunity for us to kind of get to that next level. So, but I think that with all the new ride sharing and I imagine in New York or New Jersey there's a little bit more to that effect. The car industry will probably change a little bit more drastically out there than it will out here. Just because Texas, everything, I mean, you need to buy a car to drive everywhere here. I mean, everything's so spread apart that it's not as easy as maybe in a city living area. it makes more sense just to get an Uber every month, you know?
Absolutely. Well, eventually, where I live now, you definitely need a car. But when I used to live right over by New York City, like I had one, you really didn't need it. It's one of those things. That's going to be an interesting thing from a car industry standpoint, how that kind of all evolves out. That's one of those things. It's like you want to have a crystal ball. It's tough to figure out how fast is a driverless car is going to come into play, and where technology is going. And I guess that's a good segue to talk about the AutoMiner, which you've come up with. I think it's I just talked about how you always constantly have to be like, it's one of those things where you start to get, as soon as you start to get to the top on something, if you don't figure out the next thing that can help your business, you're going to go into a downslide. And, coming up with the AutoMiner is a perfect example of adapting and figuring out new ways to do what you're doing. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So we had there's a couple of different tools out there, and how it actually started was I was printing out call lists. So we have a current database that I'd print out call lists, and I'd hand it to my sales staff, and I say, hey, here's a list, call these people, tell them, we have an opportunity to get them out of their car, give them some money back, lower their payment, help them out. Actually a real value for the customer. Well, then a couple days later, they'd ask me for another list, and then I didn't know what list I had just printed out, and I just print out the same one. They'd call the same people, right? So then you start getting upset customers, right?
Right.
So then, I also have a service department, and we get about, now we do, 7,000 customers a month out of our service facility. But, we used to reach out to them to remind them, hey, you got your next service appointment, it's due. Come on in. But, I had my salespeople calling them. I had my service people calling them. So you have a lot of overlay and people getting upset. Well, someone just called me yesterday, or, so I was like, well, why isn't there a platform that I can communicate with these clients on the same one? Right. And so I just couldn't wrap my head around that. I was like, why wouldn't we have a software for that? And so I said, you know what? It started there. And I said, I'm going to build it. I'm going to be able to create lists for my salespeople. I'm going to be able to create lists for my service people. And we're going to be able to communicate to our customers more effectively. So it was a lot of manual stuff. So they would just pick up the phone and start calling. Well, then I started thinking, well, man, there's got to be an easier way to get to as many people as we do to get to, And then SMS technology I started thinking about. And then the voicemail marketing I started thinking about. So I could create a list with 100 people. Would take my salesperson, maybe a day or two to call. I can make that same phone call in, 5 minutes, and that voicemail marketing I could send out, and literally I'll get, I'll send 100 voicemails out, and I'll get, 30 people to call me back, 25 people, depending on the message. And then if I teach them how to handle those clients, I've always been pretty strong at the phone. I'll just use my voice, rather than a robot or doing any of that. And I'll send a voicemail. People call me back, and I just start telling them why I called them. And then we end up selling cars off of it, or getting them to remind them about their service appointment. Guess what? My retention went through the roof, where the average dealer, is like 48% retention in sales. I'm, 54% in sales retention. So just in that increase alone, my revenue jumps up tremendously. So I've been able to continue to grow my owner base. Same thing for service. We're in the 80s in retention, where, most dealers are, in the 70s. So I easily can increase my either one, sales and service, but they kind of go hand in hand, So the more people I generate to sales, it drives my service business. So, and most people, for whatever reason, just aren't looking there, And it's funny because now I'm teaching them I have to teach the dealers and my staff continually training, because you got to know what to say when that customer calls back. because we will get customers that call back, every day. I mean, it's every time I send out a campaign, it's pretty incredible. The SMS technology that we have, I can't have enough salespeople to answer that technology, right? So I had to get an AI involved so that I could when I send out a communication, the artificial intelligence will actually communicate with the client like it's a real conversation, and they'll actually schedule the appointment and book it in our service department. So it's pretty incredible. I've been able to not eliminate staff, but increase staff even more because now I'm just generating more business. And
right,
it's
the effectiveness
pretty
of what you're doing is through the roof. So what I find is really interesting. So if I make a sales call, the hardest thing is getting people on the phone, right? They don't recognize your number. They don't want, I do it myself all the time, right? Number shows up. I don't know who the heck it is. I don't pick it up because I get so many calls just of people that I do know that I'm trying to be efficient with my day and not pick up calls of people that I don't know. I let them leave a message. I go listen to the message when I'm convenient. Like if I'm eating lunch, I'll listen to my messages just to see if it's somebody that I should have gotten back to. And that's almost now, other than texting, obviously someone who's going to text you if they know you, unless you send out a text message, which is great. I mean, sometimes things come through that I really need. But I find the voicemail thing really interesting because people don't pick up the phone anymore. And you leave a voicemail, and what they're more likely to do is when they get a free moment, listen to 5 or 6 messages in bulk as opposed to interrupting their day. That's what I do all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then I'll go and take action on it. I'm like, I missed Chris Martinez's call. Shoot, I did want to talk to him. I'll call him back. And as the business person, you're gonna probably pick up the phone, or you're gonna get that voicemail, and you'll end up connecting, and you'll know who's. So I think that's really interesting technology and the way people are now today about not picking up the phone if they don't know the call, the number. I think that's what was. How did you formulate that strategy? I mean, is that kind of what went into it?
Well, no, the voicemail thing came afterwards. After a year of us using the tool, I remember someone saying, "Man, I got this ringless voicemail thing," and I was like, "Well, what is that?" And well, one, I read up the rules to see if that was even legal, right? So I read up the rules, and it's legal as long as you have consent, you have this and that. But every dealer has consent on everybody. If we sold you a car, we told you in our privacy statement that we're going to reach back out to you at some point to try to help sell you another car, right? So we already have your data on file, and we have that relationship with you. And so I was saying, man, so we already have basically all the pieces together, and I just need to implement this technology into my technology. So I had to source a couple of APIs, and APIs is just a nice name for access point. So you just basically get an access point from their technology to yours, and just kind of put the pieces together. And before you know it, I was able to do that with some little bit of money and some time, and sure enough, I can generate phone calls all day, and it's pretty neat. Like yesterday, got 84 people to call me back, and we converted a lot of appointments off that. What's amazing though is, so some calls I'll get a 10% response, some I'll get a 30% response, but there's still 70% of your customers that won't call me back, right? Or email, SMS, phone, none of them. No. So where Facebook and Instagram come into play, I put that same owner base into Facebook with a message, a video, and I will target those people just to get that awareness, to make sure they understand why I'm calling. Hey, you've got equity in your vehicle. Hey, you paid a higher interest rate. I can lower your interest rate today. Call me and let me show you how you can do it. And if I target those specific messages, you see those people clicking through to your website and trying to come in. So it's pretty neat technology. I don't know that I'm the first one to think of it, but I'm the first one that's actually applied it and figured it out how to, execute on it for sure.
Absolutely. It's so let me take me through a process of how you would go about, so I at some point bought a car from you, and now I'm coming up for my maybe my lease, or maybe maybe I left you guys for a while and you want to try to get me back. How would this software, what would the process, how would you go through that whole entire sales process?
So every month I'll be sending out every month. If you're 6 months before you're going to expire, you're going to start seeing a message on Facebook that's just going to say, hey, your loan's about to expire. Let's get you back in. Let's swap you out. This is how we do it, and just break it down in that respect on a video, and just an email that we send out, the phone call. You'll hear my voicemail saying, hey, 6 months early, come on in. I could probably, break you out of that lease 6 months early, get you another vehicle. And just every month till you decide you're ready to come in, you're going to hear that message in Facebook, Instagram. You're going to get an email, you're going to get a phone call, and until you come in and you buy a car from me. So that's pretty.
How important do you think, what have you found the diligence level you need in order to convert people to the actual sales process? What's the kind of lead time that you found, and how many contacts do you think you have to have?
I don't really think it's that many. I think some people take, till they're about right, that they procrastinate, right? They want the last month. But a lot of times I get a lot of people in earlier. I mean, it's just, when I look at, if I get 100 people to call me back, I will convert 30 of them to an appointment, and I'll probably sell, 15, 16 cars off that one voicemail that I sent out.
People always want to know, how do they get, so they're in a lease, they hate this car, right, that they're in, and now I start shopping around, and I come to your dealer, and but I have 6 months or 9 months or something like that in my lease. How do I get out of that lease and come to you? How do I do that?
Well, so if you just bought it within a month, it's probably not going to happen unless you got some money down, or you have some negative equity that you have amazing credit. You're going to roll over, because just like in any vehicle or anything that you really buy, it loses value immediately, right? You can't buy a shirt, wear it for a week, and say, all right, I'm going to turn around and trade it. It's just part of what happens in the retail industry, right? So things devaluate as soon as you buy them. The example, I bought a table 5 years ago that I paid all the money for, and then I moved to another house just recently, and I didn't need the table, and I never even used the table. It was a dining room table I never used, and I got called some company to see if they'd pick it up, and they offered me, a tenth of what I paid for it. And it broke my heart. I was just like, man, it's even worse than buying a car. I mean, this made me sick to my stomach. I'm like, damn, that's unfortunate, right? But if you had it for, if you have a 36 months and you've got, you've been in it for 2.5 years, we could probably get you out of that, and maybe at a break-even point in some cases, because some cars hold their value better than others. Some residuals and some, what do you call it? Some of the incentivized rates you might have had back then are in your favor right now, especially on a Tacoma, for example. I've got some Tacomas that I've had people in them for like a year and a half. They come out and try to trade them in, and they almost get what they paid for. I mean, it's crazy to me sometimes. Wow. Those TRD Pros, I mean, there's certain cars that they never depreciate, it seems like. I mean, I don't even get it. For example, I bought my wife a Lexus, one of those SUVs, and we ended up having like 3 more kids after that, and so I had to trade her out and get a minivan, right? She really loved me for that. But so I get this Lexus, and 2 years later, we drove it for 2 years. I mean, I probably put 20,000 miles on it, and I literally probably lost $5,000. And most scenarios, you probably would have lost, 50% of the value. You know what I'm saying? but that Lexus held its value real well. I paid a certain amount for it, and from what I drove off the lot, it only cost me $5,000 for 2 years. I couldn't even believe it.
That's unbelievable.
Right?
That's unbelievable. Yeah. I guess those are the things I guess you got when you go and buy a car. That's a good, or lease a car. That's a good thing to know. Which cars hold their value, because it gives you, I guess, leverage if you want to do something later on.
Exactly. So, and Lexus, Toyota, I mean, they do pretty well. I know there's some other brands out there that do well as well, but Toyota, I've never gone wrong with them.
You wrote a book. You wrote 2 books, you said, right?
Yes.
So you wrote 2 books. What was that process like for you to write those books? And obviously, one of them you're going off of your actual experience or something you had done.
Well, actually, both of them I wrote off of my experience. So I when I was a salesman, I wrote down exactly what it would take to be to sell 30 cars a month, and I wrote the whole plan. I said, and it started real easy. I wrote the outline, and then I know the business, as well as I could. That I just started writing down. I wrote the outline. I had like 10 chapters, and then I just wrote them down, and just. You don't really need much to write a book, right? And so as long as it's good content, you know what you're talking about. I put it all in there and got an editor. She helped me out. She does an amazing job, by the way. So if you ever need an editor, I definitely would recommend her to anyone. But then she helped me, get it put and do the whole thing. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
That's really cool. And what was your time frame, and how fast did you turn it around? And
it took me approximately a whole year.
Okay.
So, and I could have probably done it more. Like I could have done it faster, but I was involved in building this business, doing the software, working out, having kids. I mean, just life. I was doing a lot of things, and so if I would have just focused on it more, I probably could have done it faster, but. It just took me some time because, I was doing it at my leisure almost. So
absolutely. What would you consider yourself a natural born salesperson, or someone that it really has to grind and figure things out along the way, or some combination of both?
I've never considered myself I look at being a sales professional as someone that just you really train, you master your craft, but it's really as long as you can talk to people, you're going to be fine. I think that as long as you can relate, you know how to talk to people. I mean, it's really all about communication at the end of the day. If you can't communicate well with your clients or with your just people, you won't be able to get that message across.
100%. It's interesting because I was talking to actually a guy that I coach with, but he's a salesman in his day job, and we're sitting there, we're just eating breakfast, and he goes, man, he's like, you're a heck of a salesman. And I'm like, I've always thought of myself as like a founder, business owner, built businesses and stuff. And I sat there and I thought to myself, and I'm like, I guess if exactly what you said, if relating to people and understanding, kind of trying to understand what they're thinking, because I'm always trying to understand what someone else is thinking, what helps them do well, and then even if it's one small thing, if I can apply it to my life, it helps me do better. That's great. If I can help someone else, even better. But I thought that was so interesting. And actually, I took a step back. I thought, I guess the whole process of your life is really, in accomplishing things, really is, if you don't know how to sell yourself, and you don't know how to help people relate to what you're trying to offer them, or what you might be doing for them, or even just your daily conversation. If you don't have that skill set, that ability to help people understand where you come from, see your side, whether they agree with you or not, and then relate to what their side is, and then figure out how you can help them, you're going to struggle, not just in business but really in life. I mean, people will struggle in life if it's a skill set that has to be developed.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just like any muscle, you got to train it. So it's good stuff, man. I really like what you're doing, man. I think I think that you found a new fan. I'm going to be listening. I'm going to be listening to everything, man. It's going to be good.
Good, very good. Tell everybody before we go. Tell everyone where they can find you. Obviously, from a car standpoint, where they can find your software, and then how they can reach out to you, your books, everything.
You can go to my website, chrisjosephmartinez.com, or you can go to the AutoMiner.com. You can find me on Facebook at Chris J Martinez ATX. On Instagram, you can find me anywhere. On LinkedIn, you can find me.
And the software is AutoMiner.com, right?
The AutoMiner.com.
The AutoMiner.com. All right, perfect. Fantastic. I really enjoyed talking with you. I'm fascinated what you do. I'm actually going to check out more in depth that AutoMiner, because I think that's an interesting thing. I find so many people are trying to do in pieces what you're doing as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
You got an SMS over here. You got a call maker over here. They're charging you $2.99 for this and $9.99 for this. And then I got my email system. I got to pay for that. From a car sales standpoint, and eventually, you may be able to leverage that with another cover name into many, many different other industries. But that inclusive thing, like, there is nothing out there. I can't tell you how many times I'm spending money for, maybe $1,000 a month on different things, where if someone could bring it all together, and obviously that's something that you do. So I'm gonna check that out. And
yeah, no, it's pretty neat, man. We're looking to expand on that for sure, and I'm in different verticals as well. So I think it's going to be a win for everybody. I think the way we can reach out and nurture your customer base, it's important for everybody. I mean, if you're not focusing on your relationships with your clients today, you're missing out big.
No doubt about it. Well, thanks, Chris, so much for being on. I really appreciate it. For the Success for Life podcast, we'll have this vlog up on YouTube. We'll have it going on there for iTunes, the actual audio. Thanks so much for being on, Chris, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, man. We'll keep in touch, man. You take care.
Thank you.
All right, man. Bye.